I mean, she took it extremely well, sort of wrapped herself up and went back again. But, everybody was crying.
Beneath the grand walls of Camilla's estate, there was a room no one spoke of, locked away from time itself. Few dared to question it, but when they scanned the walls, the story took a darker turn. What was once thought to be an empty chamber revealed layers no one could explain. The crew felt the weight of something strange pressing in, and a voice broke through the tense silence. "We shouldn't be standing here." What they uncovered was not just unexpected. It was the kind of discovery that changes everything. And now, it was time to face the consequences. Strange rumors in the palace. The palace had stood for centuries, its walls holding stories no one ever spoke aloud. Long corridors echoed with footsteps, but some parts of the building carried a strange weight that most people could feel in their bones. People walked past a particular wing every day, yet no one bothered going there. The air seemed heavier, almost as if it remembered things that had been hidden for years. One evening, a guard paused before a wooden door at the end of the hallway. He ran his hand along the chipped paint and whispered, "That hallway never felt right." His words barely left his lips before the wind carried a slight creak from the hinges. Others had noticed the door, too, but no one dared touch it. Housekeepers swept past it quickly, their brooms rattling against the stone floors, avoiding even a quick glance. One of the older staff members once shared a story while they were resting in their quarters after the day's work. He said to his colleagues, "Some rooms are closed for a reason." The eyes of a young maid widened, and the words lingered in her mind long after the man walked away. It wasn't fear exactly, but a sense that some secrets belonged behind locked doors, untouched and unspoken. Over time, staff began noticing odd details. The door did not align with the palace blueprints, and the hallway seemed longer than it should have been. One maintenance worker scratched his head as he measured the walls and muttered, "Funny thing is, the wall doesn't line up." His words spread slowly among the others, a small spark that grew into curiosity. The carpet near the door was older and frayed, unlike the polished floors everywhere else in the wing. The paint on the door was newer than the surrounding wall, a small clue that someone had altered it at some point. One maid leaned against the railing and whispered to a colleague, "There's something fishy about this place." They both glanced over their shoulders, suddenly aware of how empty the hallway felt. Staff began to talk in hushed tones about the door during breaks. Some thought it might be a safety issue. Others suspected it hid something personal from Camilla's past. A driver who worked late shifts admitted one night, "At night, you can hear faint knocks there." The comment made everyone terrified. Even new workers, who had laughed at the stories initially, found themselves walking faster past the locked door. Footsteps seemed to echo when someone passed near the wing, even when it shouldn't. "It feels like something was standing on the other side," one guard shivered and said. The older staff nodded knowingly, the way people do when they have long carried similar stories in silence. Dust collected faster near the door than in other areas, and there was always a smell of damp wood no matter how often it was cleaned. "The smell stays no matter how much we wipe," a housekeeper remarked. The wind even made the hallway feel even stranger. It made whistling sounds while passing through. Flickering lights cast long shadows that clung stubbornly to the corners, and the silence was broken only by the occasional creak of old boards. Some nights, distant voices could be heard in the corridor. "One time, I thought I heard someone talking behind the door," one guard whispered. The words passed quickly, but the tension in the air lingered. Even routine work felt different near the locked door. Staff hurried past, pretending the door was not there, yet the mystery weighed on them. One cook paused by the hallway and asked, "If it's empty, why lock it?" No one answered, but everyone felt the same troubling curiosity. The palace, polished and grand in most areas, seemed heavier in this one forgotten wing. Over time, the hidden room became more than just a locked space. It became a silent presence in the palace, shaping the way staff moved and whispered. A young cleaner admitted to a friend, "I don't want to be near it alone." The older workers nodded. They had long known that some stories could not be ignored. Footsteps, whispers, and the feeling of being watched made the room almost alive in their minds. Rumors twisted through the palace like vines, spreading from kitchens to guard posts, to stables and offices. One palace worker, trying to sound brave, said, "I bet there's something nobody should see." Even though it was meant as a joke, the statement sank into the minds of those who heard it. Each story, true or exaggerated, added weight to the mystery, and every day the hallway seemed to grow darker in imagination. The door at the end of the corridor waited silently, a guardian of the unknown. Staff spoke of it in whispers, in glances, and in hushed warnings. One young worker, trying to reassure himself, muttered, "Who would lock this room for so long?" The question had no answer, only the haunting sense that the hidden space held a truth too heavy to reveal. By the end of each day, staff carried the story with them like a shadow. Even new workers sensed it, a weight they did not fully understand. The hidden room had grown from a locked door into a riddle, a question that followed them in every step through the palace. "Some mysteries are better left alone," a cleaner sighed. The whispers continued, spreading slowly, weaving tension into every corner of the wing. The hidden room was no longer just an unused space. It became a symbol of secrecy, memory, and the unknown. Staff felt it watching, waiting, holding the palace's past like a story they had yet to hear. And so the locked door remained, untouched, heavy with history. And many who had walked past it wondered what lay behind and why it had been hidden for so long. However, it seemed like it was time to find out. The sealed room. The locked door had always stood silent, but one day the palace staff could no longer ignore it. Renovations were planned in the old wing, and workers measured the halls carefully, noting every irregularity. The door drew attention immediately. One of them shook his head and said, "This door hasn't been opened in years." The paint was fresh, but the hinges creaked as if resisting movement. Staff gathered quietly around the area, glancing at each other with doubtful eyes. A security officer checked his clipboard and said, "Blueprints don't mention this room at all." Meanwhile, the sense of mystery grew heavier with every passing minute. Maintenance workers tried knocking lightly, listening for hollow sounds, but there was only silence beneath the walls. One person stepped forward and whispered, "It feels like it's hiding something." Camilla's name was spoken rarely, but even mentioning her made the air feel tense. The staff remembered past stories, but the sealed door now seemed important, almost demanding attention. A young maid leaned closer and said, "It smells different near here, like the air is trapped." The carpenters examined the hinges, scraping the edges and pushing gently. It did not budge. Another worker joined in. "It's stronger than it looks," he murmured. The decision was made to use a scanning device to check behind the door. It was simple equipment, used to see walls and floors without breaking them, but it was enough to confirm that there was indeed something behind the thick wood. As they began scanning, one guard whispered nervously, "I don't like what this shows us." Hollow shapes appeared on the screen, uneven and strange, hinting at spaces deliberately hidden from view. The staff exchanged glances, each one feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. The carpenter muttered, "Looks like someone built this to be secret." They tried tapping different spots, listening for empty cavities beneath the floor. Each sound echoed oddly. It's like the whole room just appeared out of nowhere. The palace itself seemed to respond, groaning under the weight of history, as if it knew what would happen next. The decision was made to pry open the door. Wood splintered, dust filled the air, and everyone stepped back, coughing and waving their hands. "Careful! We don't know what's inside," one of the security officers exclaimed. The hinges gave way slowly, screeching like a warning. Finally, the door moved just enough to show the shadowy interior. Staff peered in cautiously, 1 foot at a time. "It's darker than I imagined," a maid whispered. The walls inside were old, their paint peeling, and the floorboards uneven. Yet the room felt different from any other part of the palace. The smell of the air was choking, and it carried the faint scent of something burned long ago. The carpenter looked around and muttered, "They wanted this hidden for a reason." Small beams of light from the doorway revealed shapes covered in dust, objects stacked carefully against the walls. The staff's hearts raced as they realized the room had been sealed for decades. "I can't believe no one noticed this before," one guard said in a low tone. The shadows seemed alive, stretching across the room and making familiar shapes look strange. A young worker pointed at a corner and whispered, "Something's buried there." Everyone froze for a moment, the silence so thick that even the creaking floorboards sounded loud. Careful steps brought them closer, and a small chest was uncovered, its lock broken by time. "It's been here for who knows how long," one maid gasped. The staff realized that the room was not empty at all. The objects inside told stories, papers, personal belongings, and items no one had seen in decades. "Camilla must have wanted this hidden," one of them mutters. Every object seemed deliberate, placed with care, yet left to rot over the years. The room's hidden nature became clear. It was not simply locked, it was forgotten on purpose. The staff stared at each other, knowing that the secrets inside might change what they thought about the palace's history. As dust settled, they began to move carefully, touching nothing without thinking. Each step revealed new surprises: old furniture, faded letters, and personal items that belonged to Camilla herself. "I didn't expect to see her things like this," a guard said from the corner. The room had a strange stillness, as if holding its breath, waiting for someone to understand why it had been hidden. Even the smallest objects seemed important. "Every piece tells a story," one worker said. The staff realized that nothing had been left to chance. Everything in the room had a reason to be there, and a reason to remain unseen. The carpenter leaned against the doorframe, wiping sweat from his brow as he muttered, "This is more than a room. It's a secret preserved." They worked slowly, careful not to disturb the arrangement too much. Even the light from the doorway seemed to tremble on the walls. "It feels like we're not supposed to be here," a maid whispered. Every person in the room felt the weight of history pressing in. One guard finally said, "We'll have to report this carefully." No one spoke for several minutes after that. The sealed room had revealed itself, but the mystery it held was far from over. Every glance toward the shadows reminded them that the palace had more stories than anyone could count. The room was hidden, silent, and powerful in its secrecy. And it was weirder than they imagined. Exploring the secret room. The group had expected an empty space, but what lay before them was far stranger than anyone imagined. The air inside smelled old, damp, and metallic, as if the walls themselves were already rusted. "I didn't think it would be like this," one of them whispered from behind. Faded light from the hallway stretched into the room, revealing shapes half hidden under dust-covered cloths. The staff stepped slowly, their footsteps cautious on the uneven floorboards. Every movement raised small clouds of dust, and the sunlight caught on objects in strange ways. A young maid leaned closer to a pile of boxes and murmured, "Some of these look ancient." The room was larger than expected, with low ceilings and narrow corners that hid unknown spaces. The workers began tapping walls gently, searching for hollow spots. "It feels like there are more secrets here," the carpenter noted. Some objects were stacked carefully, almost like they were arranged deliberately. A cleaner pointed at a dark corner and whispered, "Look at that. It's buried under those boards." Even the air seemed tense, as if warning them not to dig too deep. One security officer muttered, "We need to be careful with this." As they stepped further in, they noticed strange marks on the floor, scuffs, scratches, and indentations that did not match the usual wear. The staff worked slowly, checking the edges for weak spots or hidden compartments. Another worker whispered, "It's like a trapdoor, but no one ever opened it." The room felt colder than the rest of the palace, even though the air outside was warm. "It's like the room doesn't want us here," one maid said with fear. They noticed scratches along the walls, small markings that could have been old symbols or signs of something important. The cleaner pointed to a faded symbol and said, "I think someone tried to hide this." The staff began moving objects aside carefully, uncovering boxes filled with papers, personal belongings, and other items that looked carefully preserved. One guard shook his head and whispered, "These items weren't meant to be seen." They found a small chest under a pile of furniture, its lock rusted but still intact. "Someone took the time to make sure this stayed hidden," the carpenter said quietly. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper than normal, stretching as they worked, making familiar objects look strange and distorted. One of the younger staff members said nervously, "I can't tell what's real anymore." They all realized that the room was not only a storage space, it was a carefully concealed archive. Every object seemed deliberate, placed in a way to be both preserved and hidden from view. "It's like someone wanted to erase it from memory," a guard said. The sense of unease grew as they uncovered more items: faded letters, worn clothing, and objects that belonged to Camilla herself. "These could tell a story we weren't supposed to know," a security officer muttered. The raised section of the floor drew their attention again. A carpenter carefully pried at the edges, revealing a small, hollow space beneath. "There's something under there," one maid gasped. "This is more than we thought." "It's a secret below the floor," another worker said quietly. The space beneath was lined with wooden planks, and inside were small boxes and bundles that were intentionally hidden. They realized the room had layers, both literal and figurative, each holding pieces of Camilla's private life. Every new discovery added weight to the air, making movement slower. As they cleared more dust and debris, they noticed more symbols etched faintly into the floorboards and walls. One pointed to them and muttered, "These markings mean something." The shadows stretched across the walls, deepening the sense of mystery and tension. One cleaner shivered and said, "We shouldn't be touching all this. It feels wrong." The staff worked slowly, examining without moving too much, realizing the room had hidden spaces yet to be revealed. A security officer finally said, "We'll have to report everything carefully. This isn't just a room. It's a record of secrets." The room, silent yet full of hidden life, had begun to reveal itself. Every corner, shadow, and object hinted at stories long buried and carefully concealed from the palace's memory. The staff felt the weight of the discoveries pressing in, knowing that this was only the first shocking glimpse into a deeper mystery. The hidden truth about Camilla. After uncovering the hidden space beneath the floorboards, the staff gathered around, their faces tense with anticipation. The objects, bundles, and chests revealed a carefully hidden life, but no one knew exactly why it had been concealed for so long. "It's more than just a secret room. There's purpose here," one guard muttered. The air felt heavier than before, as if the palace itself knew the weight of the mystery. Staff exchanged quiet glances, realizing that the hidden space was part of a story they had yet to understand. "Every item seems chosen. Nothing was left by accident," one of them whispered. They began examining the arrangement, noticing patterns in how bundles were stacked, the order of chests, and even the direction objects faced. The carpenter leaned forward and muttered, "Someone had a plan when they hid all this." Letters and small personal items seemed to tell a narrative of Camilla's life, her thoughts, and her intentions. Someone pointed to a bundle of letters and whispered, "These aren't just old papers. They mean something." The staff realized that Camilla had carefully controlled what anyone might see, preserving her story while keeping it private. One security officer said softly, "She wanted someone to discover this, eventually, but only in the right way." They noticed small symbols on the floor and walls, likely meant to guide or warn anyone who might uncover the hidden space. "These markings, they're like instructions left for the future," one of them whispered. The way items were layered suggested that the space was more than storage. It was an archive, a private record meant to endure. "She must have known this room would be found one day. She prepared it carefully," one guard said quietly. Objects placed in corners, bundles wrapped meticulously, or tied all showed deliberate intention. "It's like a map of her thoughts, each piece in its place," the carpenter muttered. They realized that the hidden space could reveal truths about the palace, Camilla's decisions, and events no one had questioned openly. One of the workers whispered, "Everything here tells a story. We just have to understand it." Even small trinkets, previously overlooked, seemed important now, acting as clues to the life Camilla had hidden. A cleaner pointed to a chest and muttered, "This one looks different. She wanted it to stand out." The room beneath the floorboards was more than a physical space. It was a proof of secrecy, planning, and foresight. "We're only scratching the surface. There's more to understand here," one of the guards said. Even small symbols, faint scratches, and carefully tied bundles suggested a deliberate plan to protect a story. One guard said quietly, "Everything here was hidden for a reason, and now it's speaking to us." The staff realized that the meaning behind the hidden space was layered, personal, historical, and possibly protective. A maid whispered, "It's like she knew someone would come, but only when the time was right." Every object added weight to that idea, and every bundle suggested careful thought. One of the workers pointed to a small box and said, "Maybe she wanted us to learn something from this." The items collectively hinted at decisions made in private, events kept secret, and a deliberate effort to control the narrative of her life. The carpenter said softly, "This is more than hiding things. It's hiding history." The staff continued examining each object carefully, piecing together possible meanings while respecting the careful preservation. One guard muttered, "She trusted someone, even if she didn't know who." The hidden space became more than discovery. It became understanding. "We're walking through her past, and she's guiding us," one of the maids presumed. Each layer revealed intent, each bundle hinted at thought, and every placement spoke to careful planning. The hidden space beneath the palace floorboards had finally revealed its meaning: careful preservation, intentional secrecy, and a message that could only be understood by those who looked closely. A maid whispered as they prepared to leave, "She wanted her story to survive, and we've just begun to read it." Another shocking discovery. The hollow space beneath the floorboards had been partially uncovered, but the staff still didn't know the full truth. They had lifted boards, examined hidden bundles, and carefully moved objects, but something told them the most shocking discovery was still to come. One of them whispered nervously, "I have a feeling we haven't seen the worst yet." The faint smell of old wood and dust hung in the air as the staff approached the darkest corner of the hollow. "Whatever is down here, it's been kept for a reason," a guard muttered. They pried back a section of boards that had seemed ordinary before, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. The carpenter leaned over and said quietly, "This wasn't on the plans. It goes deeper than anyone expected." The staff hesitated, glancing at each other, knowing that crossing this threshold could change everything. "I don't know if we're ready for what's down there," one maid whispered. With careful steps, they descended the creaking stairs, the dim light from above fading as they went deeper. Every movement stirred up dust, and one cleaner muttered, "It's like the air is thicker here, heavier." At the bottom, the room opened into a space unlike anything they had seen. Walls were lined with strange markings, and objects were stacked in patterns that made no immediate sense. This isn't just storage. It's something else," one of the maids said. Among the objects, they noticed several small cages covered with cloth. "What on earth?" one guard whispered nervously. As they pulled the clothes back, their jaws dropped. The staff realized this was not just a secret archive of belongings. It was a hidden collection, well maintained. One younger staff member shook his head and whispered, "I never thought the room would contain something alive or preserved." Small jars contained tiny objects, plants and insects, each labeled in Camilla's handwriting. A guard said quietly, "She wasn't just hiding things, she was curating them." In a corner, a larger crate rattled faintly. One cleaner whispered, "It's moving, but there's nothing alive in it, is there?" They carefully opened it and found a strange device made of brass and glass, partially broken but obviously intricate. Surprised, one of the workers said, "I don't know what this is. It's like some kind of machine." Nearby, sketches on the wall depicted the device and the creatures, showing experiments and observations no one had imagined. The staff felt a mix of awe and horror. One guard muttered, "I never thought Camilla could do this." Every bundle, cage, and jar suggested years of secret study, carefully documented but completely hidden. "She kept this from everyone, even those closest to her," someone whispered. Even the smallest jars contained something unusual. Tiny preserved insects arranged in patterns, some with pins, some floating in liquid. One of the security officers muttered, "This is more than a secret. This is shocking beyond words." Old journals described experiments, observations, and notes that explained why Camilla had kept the room hidden. The carpenter said quietly, "She must have known people would be shocked. That's why she hid it so well." As they explored further, they noticed a slightly visible trap door at the back wall of the hidden lab. A guard whispered, "There's more down there." The staff realized that Camilla's hidden room contained decades of work, secrets, and experiments that no one had ever suspected. One of them muttered, "Everything we've seen. This changes everything about the palace." Even the strange device they found appeared to be some kind of intricate experiment, its purpose lost to time but clearly significant. A carpenter whispered, "She wanted her work preserved, and no one else to know." The shocking reveal was complete. A secret laboratory and preserved collection, hidden under the palace for decades, containing knowledge, objects, and experiments that stunned every staff member. One guard finally said quietly, "I can't believe we just uncovered this. It's unbelievable." The room beneath Camilla's hidden chamber had transformed from a mystery into a revelation. Every object, note, and specimen told a story of secrecy, curiosity, and astonishing dedication. A maid whispered as they stepped back, "I don't know if anyone will ever believe what we've seen." The staff left the hidden room with their minds racing, understanding that the shocking reveal would change how they viewed Camilla and the palace forever, keeping it secret. The days after the discovery of Camilla's hidden room felt different in the palace. Every staff member carried the weight of what they had uncovered, knowing they had seen secrets no one else had. One guard muttered, "I keep thinking about what we found. It's hard to focus on anything else." The hidden items became a quiet presence in the palace, a reminder of the life Camilla had kept private. "I can't stop trying to figure out why she hid all that and what she wanted us to learn," he said. Even simple tasks felt heavier, the staff aware that they had touched history, preserved it, and become part of the story. One maid said softly, "Everything feels different now, like we're living in a place full of secrets." The palace seemed to hum with the memory of what had been uncovered, walls and floors echoing stories long hidden. Another member of the group muttered, "I can't look at that corner the same way. We know what's beneath it now." Discussions among staff shifted to the discovery, cautious at first, then more open as they shared observations and feelings. One guard whispered, "I keep imagining what Camilla thought when she hid it, what she expected us to do." The palace authorities were informed, but the staff insisted that access be limited, ensuring the item's preservation and respecting the secrecy. One maid muttered, "It feels like we're protecting her story, like we were chosen for it." Small objects, once overlooked, were now treated with reverence. Every single thing the group uncovered, every jar, every letter, it's part of Camilla's legacy. The staff noticed that their relationships changed subtly. Trust and respect grew as they shared the responsibility of guarding the hidden room's contents. One guard said softly, "We've been part of something no one else will ever see. It changes how we work together." Even daily routines reminded them of the discovery, from opening doors to walking past the hollow where so much had been hidden. "It's strange. Normal life feels smaller now," one of them observed. Stories began circulating quietly among other staff, though details were never shared with outsiders. One of the maids whispered, "We tell each other little bits, enough to remember, not enough to reveal everything." The hidden room became a lesson in patience, respect, and careful observation, shaping how the staff approached their duties. "It taught me to notice details. Every corner could hold a secret," one of the security officers said. The palace itself seemed different, its history now layered with Camilla's secrets, a past intertwined with the present. "It feels like the walls are watching, or remembering," one of the guards said to his colleagues. The discovery inspired the staff to approach their work with more care and thoughtfulness. A younger staff member admitted, "I pay attention to things I never noticed before. We owe it to her." Even small repairs and daily chores were influenced by the awareness of hidden history beneath their feet. The discovery also made staff wonder what other secrets the palace might hold, though none were as carefully hidden. Soon, conversations shifted subtly toward appreciation, respect, and the recognition that Camilla had trusted them in a way few people could imagine. One of them said as he realized, "We were part of her plan, part of her secret story." Months passed, but the memory of uncovering the hidden room stayed alive in every staff member. One guard whispered, "It makes you look twice at every corner. You never know what's waiting." Even after the initial shock faded, the palace held the sense of a secret preserved, a story safeguarded, and a legacy entrusted. "Every time I think of that room, I feel proud and humbled," one of the staff members confessed. The staff often revisited the records, checking inventories, photographs, and notes to ensure nothing was lost. One guard muttered, "It's our responsibility now to keep it intact for the future." The hidden room became both a memory and a duty, shaping the way staff approached their responsibilities in the palace. A younger member of the group whispered, "We've seen the past, and now we carry it forward." Even years later, the lessons of secrecy, trust, and preservation remained with them, a lasting impact they would never forget. One maid finally said softly, Even if Camilla never trusted us, we honored her secrets. The aftermath of the discovery was not chaos or gossip, but reverence, respect, and a quiet pride in being custodians of a hidden legacy. The carpenter whispered as he passed the hollow, "We'll remember this forever. It changed us all." And so the palace carried on, but beneath its floors and behind its walls, a carefully preserved story continued to shape those who had been brave and careful enough to uncover it. The spreading whispers. At first, the staff tried to lock the discovery inside their own hearts. They carried trays, swept long halls, and polished brass handles, but their minds never left the hidden room. The air in the palace changed after that night. It was no longer the same place, and everyone could feel it. Even the smallest sound in the corridor seemed sharper, as if the walls themselves were listening. One guard, with a heavy look in his eyes, muttered, "It's only a matter of time before someone else hears about it." His words captured what the others feared. Secrets could not be chained for long. Days passed, but the secret worked like smoke slipping under doors. In the guard rooms, men sharpened blades and polished boots, but their talk was no longer about routine duty. One guard whispered as if the walls might betray him, "The walls carry sound. Be careful where you speak." His warning was both superstition and survival. Stories stretched as whispers grew. Some staff claimed that strange machines had been hidden inside the hollow. A young staff member, eager to sound informed, muttered, "They're saying there were treasures, or maybe tools no one should touch." His version added fire to the rumor, though he had never been near the place. But not all agreed with such tales. A careful maid shook her head and said quietly, "Don't believe everything you hear. Most of it is just talk." Her attempt to calm the others did little. Once the seed of mystery was planted, it grew wild. More and more, the palace became filled with nervous glances. "Everyone wants to know, but no one dares to ask directly," one guard said. The secret had become too big to ignore. The discovery spread like a shadow that stretched across rooms and corridors. Guards who once walked firmly now moved with restless steps. One of them muttered while checking a locked door, "You can't hide something like this forever. It grows larger every day." He feared the secret itself was alive, swelling beyond control. Even the higher authorities began to notice. They saw the staff pause too often, exchange glances too quickly, and fall silent when footsteps approached. A maid, brushing dust from an old carpet, leaned toward her friend and whispered. One guard, who had only heard fragments, said softly, "Some say there were maps to hidden lands. Others talk of forbidden experiments." His words turned the discovery into legend, far from the truth but stronger in effect. Those who had promised silence often slipped without meaning to. A maid, pale with regret, muttered, "I didn't mean to say anything. It just came out." Her slip joined the growing river of whispers, impossible to gather back. The palace now trembled under the weight of rumor. Workers passing tools between them spoke in voices almost too soft to hear. One of them whispered as he bent over his work, "It's no longer our secret. It belongs to everyone who has heard of it." The original group gathered once more in secret. Their faces were tense, their breaths heavy. Fear grew with the spreading talk. Staff worried that not only the truth but also the twisted versions might reach ears far beyond the palace. One guard, leaning on his spear, muttered, "It's not just about what we found. It's about what people believe we found." He knew lies could be more dangerous than the real thing. The rumors had now grown so wide that no one could tell fact from fiction. One of them, staring at the stone floor, whispered, "They'll never know the truth, only shadows of it." And so the palace lived under the echo of Camilla's hidden world. It was no longer about the hollow or its contents. It was about the whispers that swelled day after day. The secret was heavy, But the whispers are heavier still. The discovery had slipped its chains. What began as a hidden room was now a haunting presence across the palace, not through objects or dust, but through words carried by human tongues. And those whispers promised never to stop. Do you think Camilla would eventually find out her secret had been discovered? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.